There's a point that comes later in life, usually without much announcement, when things finally quiet down. The calendar isn't as full anymore. The phone doesn't ring the way it used to. That constant sense of urgency that once shaped every decision starts to loosen. For a long time, life needed you every day. You woke up already responsible for something, already behind on something, already moving. And then, one day, that pressure eases. At first, it feels like relief, but then something else shows up. You wake up without anywhere you have to be. No alarm pushing you forward. No schedule waiting for your attention. You sit with your coffee longer than usual, not because you're savoring it, but because there's nowhere else to go yet. The house is quiet. Not peaceful quiet, exactly. Just open. And that's usually when the mind steps in. A conversation from years ago resurfaces. A decision you thought was settled asks for another look. There's a strange sense of urgency, even though nothing is actually required of you. People rarely talk about this part, because when life stops distracting us, we come face to face with how we've been living inside our own minds. And that's often where peace gets delayed. Not because it's unavailable, but because we don't quite know how to meet it yet. When life stops distracting you. Later, life removes many of the explanations we used to rely on. We can't say we're too busy anymore. We can't blame the pace. What remains is our inner rhythm. And for many people, that rhythm feels unsettled. Not because something is wrong, but because it was never examined before. This stage of life doesn't demand reinvention. It doesn't ask you to become someone new. It asks for attention. The kind you may never have had space to give yourself before. The unexpected power of simple days. Some of the calmest people live very simple lives. They wake up, they eat, they clean, they move, they rest. From the outside, it doesn't look like much. But when they eat, they're actually eating, not scrolling, not planning. When they clean, their hands are moving, and their mind isn't somewhere else. When they walk, they feel their steps instead of counting how many are left. They aren't rehearsing tomorrow or replaying yesterday. They're simply where they are. And that turns out to matter more than we were ever taught. Why too much thinking wears us down. With age comes experience, and with experience comes accumulation. Old regrets that never fully closed. Stories we keep retelling, futures we imagine long before they arrive. The mind gets crowded. Peace doesn't come from resolving every thought. It comes from interrupting the habit of constantly traveling somewhere else, mentally. When unnecessary information drops away, the body settles first, then the breath, and eventually, the mind follows. Not because it was forced to, but because it finally feels safe enough to slow down. Ordinary tasks as anchors. There's something grounding about ordinary tasks when we actually stay with them. You wash a dish slowly, not because it needs the extra care, but because your hands do. You wipe the counter, then wipe it again. Not chasing perfection, just staying present. These small actions send a quiet message to the nervous system. Nothing is wrong right now. Done with attention, simple tasks restore a sense of order, not just in our homes, but inside us. How we treat small moments ends up being how we treat life itself. Why the body opens. What the mind can't. Clarity often follows physical effort. Gardening until your back reminds you it's there. Walking farther than planned. Carrying something with weight. As the body works, the mind loosens its grip. Thoughts lose their sharpness. Worries stop demanding immediate answers. The noise thins out. There's a kind of honest tiredness that reaches places thinking never does. The body finishes what reflection alone can't. The inside out. Rule of change. Before life feels aligned on the outside, it has to settle on the inside. We're good at cleaning rooms and organizing drawers, but we're slower to clean assumptions. The belief that we should be further along, the fear that it's too late to change, the quiet disappointment we never named. Stillness, paired with effort, brings these things into view. Not to judge them, not to fix them, just to finally see them clearly. Why discomfort still teaches. As we age, many of us become careful. We avoid correction. We avoid friction. We avoid situations where we might be wrong. But gentle discomfort still has value. Being corrected without defending. Being reminded we don't know everything. Letting pride soften instead of harden. These moments quietly polish the edges that strain our relationships. Growth doesn't end. It simply becomes quieter. The quiet power of repetition. There's dignity in repetition. Ordinary days, the same tasks, no applause. At first, repetition can feel dull, then calming. Eventually, grounding, resistance fades, judgment softens, presence deepens. We stop demanding that every day feel meaningful, and life begins to feel whole again. Clarity without searching. Purpose doesn't arrive through chasing. It shows up when enough noise is removed. When inner space clears, it becomes easier to see what fits, what no longer does, and what can finally be released. Clarity isn't added to life, it's uncovered. A good life doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to be inhabited, fully, honestly, one ordinary moment at a time. If you're in a season where life has slowed, but your mind hasn't quite caught up yet, know that you're not doing it wrong. You're being invited. Invited to live where your hands are. Invited to let go of what no longer needs to be carried. Thank you for spending this time here. If something in these words felt familiar or stirred recognition, feel free to share it in the comments. Your reflections matter, and they often help someone else feel less alone. And if you choose to stay a little longer, I'm glad you're here. Until next time, take care and move gently through your day.